Hello and welcome back to the iStorm channel, where we're currently running a video podcast series in support of 16 Days of Activism. And we are doing this to support UN Women UK and their incentive Safe Spaces Now.
Public spaces need to be safe and inclusive for all, now. A report by UN Women UK reveals how common sexual harassment is in the UK. 97% of women my age said they had experienced harassment. Your ideas to support us have already started making a change. At music festivals, with taxi companies, on public transport, in organisations and in online spaces. It's time for a change. Please support Safe Spaces Now by donating to the cause or get involved. You can find the link next to this video. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Today's topic is domestic abuse. And with me today, I have three fantastic, very experienced people, and I'm going to hand over to them to introduce themselves, and then we are going to talk about some questions around domestic abuse. So thank you so much for taking the time and joining me. I'm going to start with you, Nathalie. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
It's so good to see you. And we've got ABIMBOLA and Ashley as well. Hello and welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. Thank you for joining us. And hello, Ashley.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Me, for having us here to support this campaign.
Thank you. Okay, so Nathalie, tell us a bit more about you and what you do, please.
Yeah, so I am Nathalie. The reason I decided to talk today is because I am a survivor of domestic violence. By occupation, I'm a public health specialist and I work in health tech, that's health technology. I also volunteer for a charity in the north of England called Family Help CIO, and it is a domestic abuse refuge for women and children.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And ABIMBOLA.
Hi, my name is ABIMBOLA ADEAGBO once again. I'm so happy to be here. I'm a medical doctor by training, and I'm a sustainable development goal advocate, passionate about 3, 4, 5 goals, most importantly, gender equality. And this is why I'm participating in this, because I'm so passionate about women and anything that has to do with women. So I'm glad that I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Ashley.
Hi, I'm Ashley. I'm based in Brighton and Hove, and I'm excited to be here today. My connection to this topic is deeply personal because I do have a history of domestic abuse, but I also have a background working with patients in sexual and reproductive health clinics, which is often deeply tied into situations of domestic abuse. And I currently work with women in my local area, connecting them with support resources and services in Brighton and Hove.
Thank you so much. So we're going to start with Nathalie. Do you mind just explaining a little bit more about what we mean in general with domestic abuse?
Yeah, so domestic abuse can encompass different things. It can be physical, so physical violence. It can be financial, economic. It can be psychological and emotional. It can be sexual abuse, and it can also encompass coercion and control.
Thank you so much. It's a very wide topic, this, and we're actually splitting it down to coercion and control and non-physical abuse as well. So it is a very wide topic, but thank you so much for clarifying there. Do we have ABIMBOLA?
Domestic abuse, for me, it's a pattern of behavior which is used to gain or maintain power and control over an intimate partner. And I'm going to emphasize majorly on power and control because I would like to liken it to what fuel is to a car and what power and control is for somebody who is experiencing domestic abuse. So the power control is like the person who is the abuser. Once the power and control is in place, there is continuous involvement of that domestic abuse and the person is not seeing anything wrong. So as I defined earlier, power and control as regards an intimate partner. That's what domestic abuse is. And in respect to what NATHALIE has said, we have different kinds of domestic abuse. We have physical abuse. In fact, we have emotional or psychological abuse. We have economic or financial. So it's cut across every areas of one's life, which is why I feel that this topic is very important.
Thank you so much. Ashley, do you want to add anything about what we can say domestic abuse is?
Absolutely. I think NATHALIE and ABIMBOLA said it quite well, but I think what I would want to add to it is just that what's important to address about domestic abuse is that it can affect anybody in intimate relationships, regardless of gender, age, disability, nationality, race, socioeconomic status, and more.
Very good. Thank you, everyone, for that clarification. So domestic abuse, this series is aimed towards stopping and preventing violence against women and girls. And we are talking about the UK because it's a national campaign in this particular case. So what do we know about the prevalence of domestic abuse in the UK? NATHALIE, can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, so according to the ONS, that's the Office of National Statistics, in England and Wales, around 2 million people are affected annually by domestic abuse. And of that, the most latest statistics said that 1.4 million of that is women and 751,000 are men. The charities, for example, such as Safe Lives, also have those figures reported, but what should be remembered, and charities and the ONS will state this as well, that's only the figures that are reported, because of course not all domestic abuse is reported. So in actual fact, that figure is likely to be higher. The other thing I would say is that women are actually much more likely than men to be the victims of high risk or severe domestic abuse. For example, 7 women a month are killed by a current or former partner in England and Wales. And according to Safe Lives, 85% of survivors sought help on average of 5 times from professionals in the year before they actually got effective help to stop the abuse.
Thank you. ABIMBOLA, do you want to add anything there?
Yes, according to National Center for Domestic Violence in the UK, 1 in 5 adults are victims of domestic abuse, in which about 1 in 4 women are victims and about 1 in 6 to 7 are men. And also last year, about 2.4 million people were said to be victims of domestic abuse, in which 1.7 million were women and 699,000 were men. And as of last year in March, it was also recorded, the police were able to record about 1.5 million. They recorded about 1.5 million related domestic abuse incidents. And also they saw that there was a 7.7 increase in rise compared to the previous domestic abuses that had happened earlier. And then for every 3 victims of domestic abuse, 2 are females, while just 1 is a male. And every 30 seconds in UK, police receive a call for help as far as domestic abuse is concerned, which shows that it's a major issue.
It is just shocking numbers, isn't it? And then we do not know what's going on outside those numbers as well, of course, because not everything is reported. Ashley?
Jumping off of what you've both already said, I think it's just important to reaffirm that these numbers are often unreported because of fear of violence, alienation, stigma, shame, things of that sort.
Yeah. So, NATHALIE, tell us a little bit more about what you see or hear through your campaigning work and experience in reference to domestic abuse, please.
I feel that domestic abuse is still relatively hidden in society. So we do see increase in campaigns about it, there's increase in advocacy about it. But when you talk about things like equality and inclusion, I don't feel like domestic abuse has the same level of understanding in society or in workplaces. And I don't feel that there is an in-depth understanding of the short and long-term impacts of it, whether that's psychological, physical or financial, unless you're someone who's experienced it or who works in the sector. I think the charities are underfunded, and charities, particularly refuges, are a lifeline for people. And so I think there needs to be much more awareness campaigning and investment put into domestic abuse, and also in terms of prevention services. And I think that when policies or legislation or support are developed for survivors of domestic abuse, people with lived experience, so that's people who've been through it, absolutely need to be included, because otherwise you have policies or strategies or support services that are not necessarily fit for purpose. So I think there definitely needs to be more inclusion of people with lived experience in the development of the solutions and prevention.
Abimbola, how do you feel about this?
Yes, based on my previous campaigns in time past, I have had encounters with women who have been victims of domestic abuse, most especially physical abuse. And for them, it just started immediately. They got pregnant, and they started receiving beatings from their partners. And the most shocking thing is that they'll feel that it's just something that is wrong with them. They don't see anything wrong with it. And then, that cycle keeps on going, especially when the abuser comes back to apologize and say that I'm sorry. And then they feel like, okay, maybe it's just me that something is wrong with. And it took a lot of time for us to be able to make her see that, no, this is not really about you. You cannot change this person. It's about the abuser himself. And so for the sake of your life and for the sake of your children and your pregnancy, you need to leave. So I think it's important that people are able to recognize the signs on time, especially at the earlier stage, because sometimes if somebody says that, okay, I'm going to live in the next 2 years, in the next 3 years, what if something happens the next month and the person is gone? What about the children left? What about the family members? Because the negative effects of these things, it's like a ripple effect as regards the loved ones concerning that person. So based on my experience, I feel for me, physical abuse, sexual abuse, most of all these abuses, I've seen women who have encountered them. So it's like almost every month you see people telling their stories, and they're like, okay, if I leave, how am I going to survive? What am I going to do? But I'm happy that there are so many organizations out there, there are so many support services that are willing to help women. And all what we women need to do is just to speak out, voice out. There is help out there. There is help, and you are not alone.
Thank you so much. That is so important. I mean, all the way from spotting it, that it is not acceptable, to the huge implications it can have for a woman to leave someone in a relationship, or her husband or family. So even though it's easy to say just leave, it might not be so easy. So we're going to come back to that. But Ashley, tell me something from your perspective that you see.
I think something that comes up for me often is this idea of prevention versus narration. And I think often people want to create prevention initiatives, but they don't often want to engage in the narratives of women's lived experiences, similar to what NATHALIE said. And I think it's really important that we dive into some of those discussions, but I think there is an avoidance almost in society due to the discomfort that can arise from talking about these topics. But I think that is the important part, the emotive part of this, that we need to be also focusing on to raise awareness, to discuss, to create educational programs and initiatives.
Absolutely. I mean, this awareness is what we are part of here, to start talking about. It's been a very taboo topic. What else, NATHALIE, do you see that is being done? Are we talking about it enough? What resources are we putting in place right now?
Yeah, so I have definitely seen fantastic initiatives in workplaces. I used to work in a national health organisation, and there was there were domestic abuse policies in place, and there was a setup of a domestic abuse peer support group, which I was involved in establishing. I worked for a law firm in the past, and they also put in place a domestic abuse policy, which actually also came with an emergency financial assistance grant. And I think that is one essential thing, because if you leave an abusive relationship, one of the key things is having that immediate finance to be able to restart and relocate. So again, I think that's something critical that should be actually safeguarded in legislation. We do have the domestic abuse legislation 2021, which came into place, and that provides additional protection for children. But again, how much our service is actually aware of that, what impact is it having in the daily lives of people, I'm not sure. One of the courses that I did was actually in terms of my recovery was actually called Keys to Freedom. It was run by a Christian charity called Mercy UK. And I think that was fantastic because it really looked at root causes and behaviors, and you know, it's a therapeutic based course, but it really got you to dig deep and look at things you know, from your own past and your own history as well. So I think it is important that when people are ready, if they're open to it, they receive therapy. When I first had counselling, I had, you know, what you would call traditional counselling. It was too soon and I didn't find it very helpful. But I think that's because when I first accessed it, I needed to focus on practical things like thinking about moving house, thinking about my income. So I think you definitely have to be over the initial trauma and ready to engage in therapy. I studied counselling myself years later, and I think that when I studied counselling myself, that was probably when my deepest healing came as well, because I was able to reflect so much, not just on my emotions, but on human behaviour. And that's when I started to come to a place of forgiveness as well. And I would also say that forgiveness doesn't mean you're saying something is right, but I think forgiveness, for me, is an important part of the healing process. And it's also part of understanding that people who engage in abuse towards others, there are often traumas in their life or their childhood that haven't been dealt with. And I think, again, that's something that's not talked about a lot. You know, you hear talk about perpetrator programs, but I think if you're really talking about addressing this, it's not just about awareness raising, but it's talking about why is this continuing to happen? Why is the higher prevalence of this happening towards women? And what is really happening psychologically and in the behaviours of the people that are continuing to do this? The other thing that definitely helped me a lot was positive psychology. I had to learn to be optimistic because I think you do have a choice. You can either stay in a place, you can stay in a situation, and even with your own mindset, you can, and it's easy to stay in a place of self-pity and go through your entire life saying, poor me, why did that happen? Or eventually you can come to a place of healing and understanding when you start to say, okay, that happened to me, but what can I do with this? What can I learn from it? How can I go forward? And when I started to look forward, and I would engage in things like the Greater Good Science Center, which is an evidence-based center at the University of Berkeley in California, Action for Happiness, which is a UK-based organization that focuses on positive psychology. I would say all those kind of things were just really positive in accelerating a change in my mindset, but also kind of giving me a lot of hope to move more forwards, you know, and think about a positive future.
Amazing. That is so important and so useful. We're going to share all the links to any organizations you mention after in the text below, so people can just click on and find if they are curious or if they need support, and also how to get in touch directly with you on the call, if that's okay. So I wanted to hear a little bit more, ABIMBOLA, if you could tell us more about the whole, you know, accepting domestic abuse and self-blame and thinking that it's probably my own fault, to spot and recognize what's going on. There's this spot, stop, leave phrase. How can we spot it? Can we stop it, or do we need to leave? Do you want to talk to me about that a little bit?
For most of the victims, they feel that they are the ones at fault. or they are doing something wrong in which it is during the abuser to abuse them, which is not so, because sometimes for some of the abusers, it might be their backgrounds, it might be that they are dealing with something else and they're just taking it out on their partners. So it is okay for you to acknowledge that, yes, this is domestic abuse, because I think it starts, first of all, it starts with acknowledging that I'm a victim of domestic abuse. You have to realize that, okay, this is domestic abuse, because you can be in denial, especially if you're a victim of domestic abuse and somebody is telling you that, no, you deserve better. You're not supposed to be treated like this. The person has to come to the realization that, no, I deserve to be treated with respect. You deserve to live a happy life. Your children deserve to live a happy life because you are unique, you are special, and you deserve to be happy. So for anyone in domestic abuse, it is time for you to acknowledge that, yes, I need help. I want to seek help and I want to come out of it. As I said, you are special, you are unique. It's something that gets to me when I hear victims of domestic abuse and they feel like they don't see anything wrong about it. And women are special people that when you allow those strengths in them, when you allow the potentials, the capacities in them to manifest, they change the world. So they deserve happy lives. They deserve to be happy. They deserve the entire happiness in the world. So I would say for anyone going through domestic abuse, I want you to realize that you are actually a victim of domestic abuse and it is time for you to seek help. It is important that you also recognize the signs. Sometimes it might be like, for example, for financial abuse, it might be as little as the partner not having access maybe to our funds, and the partner is manipulating her or preventing her from working, or the partner is insecure. For some men, they just feel insecure that, oh, my wife is progressing in her career, I don't want her to go. We women must be able to recognize these signs, both for physical, for financial, for emotional. And when you start recognizing these signs, you know that, okay, these things might get worse along the line, because the abusers, it's not like they're going to change in a day. It's not like they're going to change in 1 week. It takes time. It takes a lot of process. And you staying with that partner does not mean the partner is going to change. So you have to realize that it's not your fault that your partner is acting that way. Yes, we might do some things that might hurt our partners, but it should not lead in a way that you would be abused. Because as I said, women are special people. We are supposed to be cared for, tender, just like egg, to be protected and not to be abused. So you need to realize that you're a victim of domestic abuse. You need to seek help, get help, and make sure that you do not settle for less. I tell people around me when they tell me about being victims of domestic abuse, you are much more than this, because sometimes domestic abuse can make you lose your self-esteem, can make you lose your worth, and you start wondering that, why am I even living? I don't see anything special about myself. I don't think I need to do anything, and they are not motivated. But as you are listening, I'm telling you that you are special, you have capacities in you. Do not settle for the less. Do not allow low self-esteem. You are much more than this. There are so many things. In fact, what I do is I tell people that, okay, just your age now, maybe you're 30 or you're 20, you have like maybe 80 something years to live. It's too early to start saying you want to commit suicide or you just want to settle for the less or things like this. So you realize, you seek help, and then you follow up the process of it. Because some people, when you render help to them, like, okay, this is the first step, by the time the abuser comes back and apologizes, maybe brings flowers, presents, they just overlook it and they just forget, and they go back to that 0 point. So you must make up your mind that, no, it is forward and not backward. You keep going, because there's tendency for you to be distracted along that process of recovery. But no, you should keep going and seek for help.
Thank you so much. That is so inspiring as well to hear. Ashley, do you want to continue on the topic of spotting and stopping or leaving an abusive relationship?
Yeah, I think something that I want to touch on is this idea that after leaving an abusive relationship, it is absolutely normal to have symptoms that might not arise immediately, but they might arise later. And I always like to reference it as in your brain is like a recorder. And during a situation of domestic abuse, it might be stopping the recording so that it can tell itself, what do I need to do to get out of this situation, to take care of myself, to self-care. And sometimes those symptoms or complex mental health repercussions can arise much later. It might be weeks, it might be months, it might even be years, and that is absolutely normal. And I think that is a misconception that a lot of people have, is that right after you leave a domestic abuse situation that you're going to have those effects hit you, but it might actually be that it is even years later, and that is absolutely okay. And if that is the right time for somebody to deal with it or work through that at that time, that's absolutely okay.
And for someone who starts spotting or sensing that they are in an abusive relationship, not necessarily reaching a violent point physically just yet, what can you say to someone who is wondering what they should do, Ashley?
I think it's important to meet somebody where they're at and go at the pace that they're moving at. I think everybody moves at their own pace. And so to normalize as they're going along on their own journey, that as they're coming to the realizations that they have, or they're coming to terms with their situations, that it's absolutely okay for them to move at whatever pace is best for them in that time. And just to reaffirm that there are support services out there for them. And that hopefully as a friend or somebody working with them, that at any point, if they're looking for that support, that those people can be there, including yourself, if you're one of those individuals.
And talking about the taboos of domestic abuse, and it's very hard to talk openly about it. If someone is feeling trapped, if they don't want to go to one of these huge organizations, if they feel that it might affect them one way or the other, is there a different route they can take?
Absolutely. I mean, staying confidential about a situation is an okay approach as well. Somebody does not need to disclose their situation if they're not comfortable doing so. I think just having a support system, a person that is built in just to listen to them and hear what they have to say can be also an okay approach.
Yeah, I think this is so important. I keep going on about champions and being mentors and allies to women, especially young women, and support them, because it's hard sometimes when you are in a family and you can't speak to them. You need to have someone externally to talk to and know that you can call on them in confidence. So it's for all of us to step forward and be that ally and say to people that I'm here for you. If you need, just give me a call. It's fine. You're safe. Nathalie, do you have anything to say around that?
Yeah, so I think it's important to talk to someone you can trust, whether that's friends or family. I agree with Ashley about everyone has their own pace of dealing with things. I think it's important that people don't try and rush a change or rush you to leave, because it's not always that straightforward. There can be financial things, there can be children involved. I think there are exceptions. If you are in danger, if your life is at risk, then I do think it is urgent, and that's when you should think about contacting emergency services and making a disclosure. But I think that if it's non-life threatening, and if it's in the early days of you starting to realize something, having, whether it's a friend, whether it's a family member, someone you can trust to talk to, is important. And I think it's so important that people are non-judgmental as well, because I find people can be very judgmental, and people can think, well, why don't you just, why did you put up with that? Why haven't you left already? Why don't you just leave tomorrow? And people can try and parachute in. But I think that approach isn't really helpful, as I said, with the exception of where there is an immediate risk to someone's life, or there is a danger to an adult or child. I do think there are different ways that you need to act in those situations. There's the National Domestic Abuse helpline that you can contact. There's the Samaritans, and there are local services and charities in every area as well. I think one thing that is really important as well is peer support. But I would say peer support isn't something I engaged in until years later. I qualified years later as a coach and a mentor. And then I started mentoring other survivors of domestic abuse and domestic violence. And there are even other survivors who I mentored who also joined UN Women on the Commission of Status of Women. And there are also other survivors who I worked with to set up peer support groups in organizations. But again, I think those kind of things, the peer support and the mentoring, only from my experience, came years after the event. And, you know, when I was healed, you know, are you ever fully healed? I don't know, but healed to the point that I was able to engage in peer support and engage in progressive, you know, conversations and mentoring.
I'm very sad to hear what you must have gone through. That's really, really, really hard, and glad to hear that you're feeling almost healed at least. But yes, can people ever heal? That's a question. I don't know, but hopefully, and all of us need to make sure that we do what we can to support. And ABIMBOLA, do you want to add anything on this topic?
Yes, please. I'd like to add to it that the person that a victim is confiding in must be somebody that is patient, because you can't rush that person and you're like, okay, tell me everything that's been happening for the past 5 years. The person needs to be patient. So patience is important, and you need to remind them that they are not alone in this, because sometimes that's just all what they want to hear, that they are not alone. In addition to what NATHALIE said, we should not be judgmental, because if they had a way of choosing something else, they would have. So we should not be judgmental, and then we should also make sure that whenever they are in danger, it can be like a signal or a code word or something that they can use to reach out to such person just in case they are in danger, and then the person is able to respond. So it's like you've been available for that person, because there are some that even it's easy to say that, okay, why not just go to the police to go and report? Why not just go to the organizations? It can even be traumatic for some people. So if someone is confiding in you, you should be that person who is patient, who is showing support, that yes, okay, I'm with you every step of the way. When you need anything, let me know. I'm worried about you. And also make sure that the person is safe at all times. Yes, you might not be staying with that person, but there are ways in which you can ensure the safety of that person. If it is for the person to bring maybe some important documents, just in case of emergency, when the person needs to leave home, the person is just leaving straight, not with the hope of, okay, I'm going back because I've forgotten something. So for anyone listening, even if you are not a victim, if you are the person that someone is confiding in, please be patient, don't judge them, ensure that they are safe, and render any help you can for them every step of the way. Thank you.
Of course, because if you're from a family where you might be ousted, where you're losing everything, and where they're not going to accept even an accusation, then that is, of course, really, really hard to step away from. Ashley?
I think it's all been said really well already. I don't have...
Okay. NATHALIE, I'm going to go back to you to make sure that we have mentioned something that is quite shocking, which is that, tell me the statistics of the 85%.
Yeah, so 85% of, let me just get the exact wording, 85% of survivors of domestic abuse sought help on average of 5 times from professionals in the year before they got effective help to stop the abuse. So that was from Safe Lives. And another interesting stat from Safe Lives was that women on average live with an abusive partner for 2 to 3 years before they start to seek help.
So going from the physical abuse, coercion, control, which could be financial, it could be technical, digital, it could be, you know, family controlling a person as a group even, and then these patterns build up, and they can turn to physical abuse. So it's not often a case where it's just bang, physical abuse. It's a long chain of different systematic abuse of all kinds that builds up over a long period of time. But then 5 times to seek help. How do you feel about that?
It doesn't surprise me, because I think in the process of seeking help, it's first of all being able to identify it, recognize it, acknowledge it, understand it, think about dealing with it, acting on it. And then once you've gone through that process, it's still a case of finding the right organization. Sometimes when you reach out to an organization, whether it's a charitable or a statutory services, they don't always respond effectively the first time. And I think that's part of it. There are also things like response times, waiting lists, which affect how and when someone will get support. So I think it's a concerning figure, but I think that it doesn't surprise me. And I do think it's important that there are helplines available, phone lines and monitored chat lines, because sometimes when someone is ready to seek support, they won't be ready initially to seek face-to-face support, but they would be available. They would probably find it easier to talk to someone on the phone, for example, which is more anonymous.
Thank you. Is there any one person in particular, or organization, or part of the government that you would like to step forward on this, if you could ask them to and take action?
So I think the work that's done by the Domestic Abuse Commissioner for England and Wales is fantastic. I think that post needs to stay in place and continue to be funded and supported. I think that all MPs have a responsibility to take domestic abuse seriously in terms of funding, in terms of awareness raising, in terms of supporting charities, in terms of understanding the issue. I think that, yes, we need all those things to happen at a national level through the government. But I think that when you were talking about having an impact on people's lives at the grassroots level, it's often about what's happening in someone's community. So yes, you might know that a national phone line is available, but if someone is thinking about leaving, they might want to know, okay, where can I physically go to a refuge? Sometimes you might need to go to the other side of the country for safety, but sometimes people need something that's visible. So I think MPs working with domestic abuse charities at a local level and thinking, what localized campaigns and information can we have that people are actually going to see and be able to access? I do think that's important as well.
We haven't really talked about the demographics of domestic abuse. I don't know, ABIMBOLA, do you know anything about if it's a specific area, age group, culture in the UK where domestic abuse is more prevalent?
Yes, based on my research, I think it's more prevalent in England and Wales, and also in young people between 16 to 24. It's much more rampant in young people. Yes.
Ashley, do you know anything about the demographics?
I don't have many statistics on the demographics, no.
That's okay. And Nathalie, do you?
As I've said, just that it's a higher proportion of women than men statistically. But in terms of demographics, digging deeper to that, I don't have any to hand. What I would say is it can affect people, and Ashley said this before, from any background, in terms of social economic position, ethnicity. But of course, for people who don't have the economic resources to leave an abusive relationship, that definitely places a greater difficulty on people. So I think that having access to finance, whether it's through your own income, your own financial resources, or friends and family, is a huge factor in people having the option to kind of rebuild their life and restart over.
Thank you so much. How can people get in touch with you, Nathalie, please?
So I am happy to share my LinkedIn contact details. But if people want to contact me through yourselves or through UN Women UK, which I'm a member of, I'm happy for people to reach out via those networks as well.
Brilliant. And we'll share your contact details, and everyone's in the text below this video. ABIMBOLA, how can people connect with you online?
Yes, I'm on social media, on Instagram and Twitter. My name, ABIMBOLA_ADEAGBO, both on Twitter and on Instagram.
Thank you so much. And Ashley, do you have a way for people to connect with you online?
I think using LinkedIn as well as the platform, the UN Women UK, is always the best platform for myself. As well as I just want to also extend that as somebody coming from an LGBTQ background, I'm always open to discussing as well the intersectionality of how that can play into domestic abuse.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for adding that. Is there anything else anyone would like to add before I have to close the call? Nathalie, ABIMBOLA, Ashley?
Yeah, I would just say to have hope. I think at the time when you're going through the situation, it can feel like your entire world has been turned upside down. But I would always say keep going, because it doesn't stay like that forever. And I think, yeah, there's a hard process to go through in the change and coming through it. But I think once you go through it, you know, you can have a fantastic life again. And so I would say always hold on to hope, and just remember that if you decide to leave and decide to move forward, things are going to get better. They can get better, and it's worth that process of change that you have to go through.
Fabulous. ABIMBOLA, any words of hope?
Yes, after coming out of the domestic abuse, get moving. It might take you a lot of time. It might take you months. Just take your time and get moving. Don't stop. And also don't isolate yourself. Connect with friends, volunteer, get involved with activities that you enjoy doing. If you need to talk to someone, talk to someone. Then also take care of your health. Your health is very, very important. Get good quality sleep, eat balanced diet, exercise, take care of yourself, and keep believing in yourself. You are your greatest cheerleader. No matter what the world says, you need to encourage yourself that, yes, you are doing well. So you coming out, that's an applause already for you that you are doing well. So keep going and don't stop.
Brilliant advice. Thank you so much. And Ashley, advice and hope.
I thought those were both beautiful, but I think it is normal that sometimes it can get worse before it gets better, and that is okay. And it can feel crushing and it can feel overwhelming, but just have some hope that hopefully it's going to get better with time.
Thank you so much. That is fabulous. So all the links to connect and to find the organizations we have been talking about under this video. Thank you so much for joining me in this call. Ashley, Nathalie and ABIMBOLA. And we're back tomorrow with a new video episode. So come back and watch that as well. Subscribe to the channel. And please, please donate to Safe Spaces Now. This is UN Women UK's incentive to help and support women and girls out and about. So don't miss that opportunity to click on the link under this video as well to support Safe Spaces Now. Thank you very much, and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.
Don't forget to donate to Safe Spaces Now, link next to the video.